So guys, today I have an interesting video. We're playing some Madden, but nobody is allowed to leave their said team. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep giving every single player a 7-year contract. And that is every single player in the whole entire league. Every draft pick, yeah, you guessed it, is going to get a 7-year contract. Every single player is going to get a 7-year contract. So even the worst of the worst. So even like, for example, let's go down this list right here. Players like, how far can we go down here? Jameis Winston, who probably won't be on the Cleveland Brownies for that much longer, right? Well, guess what? You're going to be on the 7-year contract, Winston. And if we go down all the way to the bottom of the list here, and I go to overalls, Nathan Peterman, 49 overall. Well, the Saints decided that they wanted to keep him for 7 more years. I hope you guys understand the premise, okay? Nobody's going to leave their teams. We're going to keep simming, and we're just going to see how things shake out. Potentially to shake out good, potentially to shake out bad. I kind of am interested just because usually in Madden, the big name quarterbacks, like you'll see Patrick Mahomes leave the Chiefs, you'll see Lamar leave the Ravens. So you see like some big name players leaving their teams. And you rarely ever see them stay on their respected teams for very long. Now, of course, nothing really is going to happen in sense until 7 years from now, because everybody is on that 7-year contract. So let's just see how the first year goes. And what I'm going to kind of do here is kind of sim it every year and just show you guys the end of the year and how the end of the year progressed. So like, for example, who won the Super Bowl, all that kind of stuff. And we're just going to continue to go on and on and on until, again, we'll see how this ends up turning out. So 1 second. All right, so going to the Super Bowl here. By the way, I actually did a little thing or two to make this a little bit more interesting with everyone having to say on their teams. I realized there's a loophole to that. Players can retire. Well, they can't retire if they're 5 years old. Yeah, this is like my age-old thing I always do. I make players 5 years old. I don't know why. Don't ask questions, but let's just see who wins the Super Bowl, and we're kind of kick it from there, okay? We're kind of kick it from there at this point. Dolphins beat the Falcons. I think the Falcons are making the Super Bowl this year, but I hope everybody loves their team, because you're going to have your team for the rest of your careers. And also rookies. That's also another thing. So, let's look at his stats. Again, the first year really doesn't matter at the end of the day. I mean, I guess players might play worse because of the fact that they get, that they're kind of on 7-year contracts, so you don't have to worry about getting cut. Although, as you guys saw from some of the contracts we looked at, after the 4th or 5th year, you're not really getting paid that much anymore, so maybe you might be less amped to play as good as you could, with that being said. But guys, we're going to get to the next year. Alright, so skipping forward a bunch of years. My players are now 11 years old. So weird to say that. Anyway, though, as you can see, okay, so every year, every player right now has a 5-year contract. I have to update their contract to 7 years. Well, they've been on their team for a good amount of years, okay? So we go back here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Well, actually, no, 7 years. So we're 7 years in the future. So all the players we talked about before, the Saints, for example, with Nathan Peterman. How did they cut Nathan Peterman? What? He had a 7-year contract with you. Wait, was he not on the Saints? Wait, hold up. Okay. I am so confused right now. Because they all had 7-year contracts. For the most part, these rosters look very similar to exactly the same. And what's weird to me is players can't retire because they're, 11 years old. So players still leave teams even if they're on a 7-year contract? Because I never let the contract expire. But apparently they can still leave and teams can still cut players even if their contracts, they still have a 7-year contract with a team. That's interesting. Okay. Well, you live and you learn. Something every day. Anyway, though, Jags won the Super Bowl. Chiefs won the Super Bowl. The Falcons won. We had the 49ers won. We had the Vikings won. Dolphins. And obviously Chiefs there. So what I'm interested in then is where is Nathan Peterman now? Because let's go with Jameis Winston because he's a good example. Because we went ahead and looked at him in the beginning of this video. Oh, lordy. Okay, so is this the glitch? This might be the glitch that happens sometimes in Madden. Or it might be actually he's on free agency when he shouldn't be. Nope, he is on free agency. So it looks like even if the players have 7-year contracts, they can still be cut. Which, I mean, I guess does make sense for like 53-man rosters. Well, you got to get down to 53-man roster. So even if you have a 7-year contract with a player, they're still going to get cut if they're not a good player, right? It doesn't matter what the situation is. If they're not a good player, they're going to get cut. I just thought that they might prioritize. I guess, if everyone has a 7-year contract, it's kind of hard to prioritize every single player if you think about it. So maybe that's not as ridiculously crazy. Did they let him play out his 7-year contract, or did they cut him before that? Let's take a look at that. So let me go to quarterbacks here. And let's go to ratings, health, progression. Okay, so I had to sign him to actually look at his stats. Or maybe... No, okay, whatever. I signed him to the active roster, so we'll take a look at what ends up happening here. But let's see. So Jameis Winston, how many years did you play with the Browns? You played from 2024, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So after 5 years, they even started him in his 5th year, and then they cut him. Wow. Okay. So it looks like, and we're going to go through a lot of these different teams, it looks like then they probably kept the player for 5 of the 7-year contract and then just terminated it. Interesting. Because, again, keep in mind, you might say, well, someone might have retired. No. Players can't retire. They're 5 years old, but now they're 11 years old. So no player is going to retire in this. It's just the theory is, even a 7-year contract, they're just going to get cut if they're not good enough. So if you're good enough, you're going to stay. So in theory, what this is then is the star playmakers are going to stay on their teams for pretty much forever. But the players, or if you start playing bad, or you start regressing, which would be really weird because you're 11 years old, you shouldn't be regressing that fast, you automatically are going to get cut and lose your team. Which does make logical sense. But also, I don't know. Okay. Again, this was a theory. I wanted to see how it would go. And I guess the theory is answered. That if you keep players on 7-year contracts forever, they're just eventually going to... I mean, if they're going to eventually regress to a point where they get cut. And then they're just no longer on a team. But as long as they're good enough player, with obviously them being as young they are, they're going to continue to be on the team. I mean, they'll continue to stay on the team they're on. So, very interesting. Tell me down below your thoughts and opinions. See you guys next one.